Proverbs 30, verses 7 through 9. Two things I ask of you, deny them not to me before I die. Remove far from me falsehood and lying, give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me. Lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you to the Fridleys. Just like me, Josh, you married up, bro. Thank God for a wife with wisdom. Before Easter, we were well into our series on Proverbs. And so we've opened the book of Proverbs, and we're trying to understand practical wisdom, and we are one topic after another. And the way we're choosing the topics for our study is really how much does Proverbs speak about a particular subject? And this book, just Proverbs, of course, the whole Bible does this. Jesus talked a lot about wealth and money, but Proverbs itself really speaks a lot about wealth and money. And so today we're going to try to get a lot on the table about this subject, and then next week's kind of a 1-2 punch. Next week we'll talk about contentment. So generosity has been thematically one of the ideas today, and then next week contentment. I want to try to survey the sort of emphasis of Proverbs on wealth and money today, not just generosity. So the Federal Reserve Bank of New York says that 2022 ended with an all-time high of retail debt on credit cards, $986 billion. The average household, depending on where you live, what state, anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 per household of retail debt. That does not include mortgage, car payment, or student loans. I also learned this week that the average debt generated by a man addicted to gambling is depending on where you live, is between $55,000 and $90,000. That's the debt load that a gambler carries, almost $100,000 in some states. Women gamblers average about $15,000, much less. Once again, we're thankful for our wives this morning. If anyone in here were to confess at dabbling in gambling, I hope that's not a thing for you. That you just are sort of dabbling with a little bit of money on FanDuel or Caesars or whatever else the appeal is. As a spending culture, we're just a financial mess. A little closer to home, a friend of mine and I were talking a couple weeks ago, and he said to me, I don't know what to do. My brother has asked me to pay off $50,000 of his credit cards. I said, what did you say? I can't help you. Could you imagine two grown brothers having that conversation? Will you pay off this $50,000 debt? I can't help you. That's hard. At every level. And one of the hardest things to do, really, in life, when you get your first full-time job, one of the hardest things to do is to live within your means. And then to sustain living within your means as your income increases and your family grows and all those kinds of things. It's an incredibly challenging thing, but it is so freeing to learn to live within your means. It's absolutely stabilizing and freeing to learn to live with what God has entrusted to you. So my favorite single proverb on wealth and money is what Rachel just read, Proverbs 30 and verse 8. Give me neither poverty nor riches. So just if you could keep yourself there in Proverbs. We're going to be flipping around a good bit this morning in Proverbs, but again, just drop down to 30 and verse 8 and just mark that, write that on the tablet of your heart. Lord, as a prayer even this morning, Lord, give me a willingness. Would you be willing to voice that as a prayer as we open God's word just quietly in your own heart and mind? Like, Lord, give me a willingness to embrace this kind of beautiful balance for life. Lord, give me neither poverty nor riches, neither one. Because if I'm loaded and I've got tons of access to wealth and riches, I might be full and just deny the Lord. But if I'm poor, if I don't have what I need, I might be tempted to steal and dishonor God's name. So it just captures so well the essence of biblical wisdom on wealth and money. And remember, wisdom is the art and craft of living as God intends. So if you're thinking about what wisdom is and then how it would influence or inform the use of money, that's a really important reminder, I think, on the definition of wisdom, because there's no Bible verse on how much to spend on a car, a house, a latte, or a hairstyle. We don't get that kind of instruction in the Bible. Instead, we get wisdom to know how to live in 1,000 different contexts that the Bible does not speak explicitly about. So this is the genius of Proverbs. Like, there's this beautiful balance in Proverbs 30, verse 8, neither poverty nor riches. There's also, as you step back and just look at the use of language in Proverbs, the number of references to wealth and money. About half of the time, there's this beautiful balance in Proverbs. About half of the time wealth is used in Proverbs, it's a good thing. See the beginning of the book. Honor the Lord with your wealth. Chapter 3, with the first fruits of your produce. And then you'll have plenty in your barn, and your vats will overflow with wine. Or chapter 8, wisdom promises that if you walk with her, you will have more than physical prosperity. You'll have a wealth of riches. So about half the time when you're reading through Proverbs, wealth and money is put in a good light. It's to be prized, pursued, stewarded, managed well. About the other half the time, wealth is referred to in Proverbs, you are supposed to stay as far away from it as you possibly can. Don't trust it. Don't trust in it. Like, don't let it pull you into its own heart and soul. It's one warning after another in Proverbs about wealth and money. So there's a balance. And today, I think the emphasis will be on, because I think this is what most of us need, the emphasis is going to be on not trusting in it and not looking to it for something that we should not look to. So let me give you 4 reasons. I want to give you 4 reasons to not trust in wealth and money. And again, just so we're not misunderstood here, wealth is not an evil thing. Wealth is not a bad thing. It's a gift from God that has been entrusted to us. There's a huge study to be done there, and we're going to close with some of that at the end. But I think we're going to settle in this morning on 4 reasons not to trust in wealth and money. Number 1, go to chapter 20. If you could flip over to chapter 20. Again, we're going to move around. Chapter 20 and verse 10 with me. Money can make you dishonest and deceitful. This is true of both wealth and money, but I'm just going to say money on these points just as a little stickier. Money can make you dishonest and deceitful. Look at chapter 20, verse 10. This is a classic example, again, just to think back a little bit about how Proverbs works, that you don't first see what the truth of the proverb is until you meditate on it, until you struggle with it and wrestle with it a little bit. So look at this verse, because it's not altogether clear what's happening in verse 10. Unequal weights and unequal measures. are both an abomination to the Lord. What's happening here? The literal text of the Hebrew Scriptures just says this, and some of you might have a translation that kind of points you to this. Stone and stone, ephah and ephah. What? Like, what's happening here? Well, the scene is the marketplace. And so what you have here is literally the text is saying one stone and another stone. The buyer has a stone, but the seller sees a stone. And there's a difference between the two stones. There's also a difference between the two measurements. So as you wrestle with this proverb, you see that it's a marketplace proverb, and you can see that what's happening here is the stone that was the established measuring weight, maybe it has a 2-pound label on it. The stone says 2 pounds, but the seller actually has a 1.8-pound stone there. So when he weighs out the wheat or the flour, the ephah, on the other side, this guy thinks he's getting 2 pounds of wheat. He's not. He's getting 1.8. And that guy can skim profit off of every transaction and make more and more money. And it looks like he's selling legally, but he's really not. And so this proverb, at first you're like, wait, what's happening? Well, it's once you see it and you understand how this is working, it's just really clear. This is about deceptive business practices. And that's why the translators have rendered it something like unequal weights and unequal measures. You got an unequal weight on one side, and then you have the unequal measure of the ephah or the flour on the other side. This person has been incredibly deceptive to try to make profit for himself. Here's the point. You might be a person of integrity as you start off in your business life. You might be an honest person. But then as you live in this dog-eat-dog world, you start rationalizing to yourself, well, man, everybody else is doing this. If I'm going to survive, I'm going to have to skim a little bit too. And this is the way the world works. And you might even in your context find different ways to do that and rationalize that it's okay. This proverb reminds us that money is so powerful that it can take a person with integrity and create deceptive, dishonest practices in their lives. Don't be naive about the power of wealth and money to deceive you. Of course, it's not the money that's deceiving you. It's the power behind the money. Money is currency, right? There's something else going on here. Look down to verse 17. Bread gained by deceit. This is an agricultural society. It's a bartering society. This means income, profitability. Bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards, his mouth is full of stones, full of gravel. It'll trick you. Money can make you dishonest and deceitful. Don't underestimate the power of money on your heart and soul. Number 2, money can also make you cold and ruthless. Go to chapter 11. Flip back to 11. Verse 26. Money can make you cold and ruthless. Oh, and I should add, try not to think about other people right now. Because that's what we do. Oh, that guy burned me. You're thinking back 10 years, 20 years ago, thinking back in your own heart and mind about that person who burned you, who was cold and ruthless. Please don't think about them right now. I mean, that's true. Maybe that happened, but let's think about us. Look at 11:26. The people curse him who holds back grain, but a blessing is on the head of him who sells it. What's happening here? This is another marketplace imagery. What do you think's happening? Read it again. Just read it one more time. And what do you think's happening? The people curse him who holds back grain. but a blessing is on the head of him who sells it. What's happening here is not dishonesty like in the first point. It's greed. Greed combined with a lack of compassion for others. This seller, this man, this entrepreneur is cold and ruthless. The situation is food scarcity. So there's a problem. And people need food. And this particular seller holds back. What's he doing? He's waiting for the price to go up. He's just going to hold back. He's going to hold back until there's so much need that people are willing to pay exorbitant prices. This is not dishonest or illegal. Not in this context. Not according to the rules of this particular society. It's not dishonest, it's open, it's not illegal. So in a free market society, you may not be breaking a single rule, and yet you lack wisdom. Because wisdom takes us way beyond the stated rules, right? Wisdom keeps in mind that there is a need in the society around you, that there's compassion to be had for those around you. So the people don't feel this person's compassion, they feel his greed. And the Bible says in verse 26, they curse him because of it. Go to chapter 20, verse 14. And if you want the church to get quiet, talk about wealth and money. Dang. It is quiet in here. Mike, are you still with me? Yes, sir. All right, I got a wave. Okay, I got a wave from Spillman. Verse 14. Bad, bad, says the buyer. But when he goes away, he's like, man, I got such a deal. I got such a deal. That guy has no idea. I'm going to turn around and flip this. Money can make you cold and ruthless and make you a negotiator who's not a wise negotiator, not a gracious negotiator, not a balanced, society-aware, community-aware, neighbor-need negotiator, but a self-centered, profitability, greedy, just money can make you such a powerful negotiator that the society that you live in will even exalt that powerful negotiation on Shark Tank or The Apprentice and help you as a society to love the self-glory of the powerful negotiator. This is real. This is a real problem for us as Christians. There's a whole cluster of proverbs that will not allow you to adopt a personal financial approach or business model that has one single bottom line: profitability. It has to be more complex than that. Proverbs wants to say there's not just one single profitability bottom line. There's a bottom line that's way more beautiful and compelling than just profitability. It's the needs of the society in which you live, and your neighbor, and your family, and people. In Proverbs, it's never just bottom line profitability. The righteous are those who care about, with compassion, those who lack or don't know how to work hard, but should be called, trained, and discipled in how to work hard. When he goes away, he boasts. Who does he boast to? Verse 14 of chapter 20. Who do you think he boasts to? Well, he boasts to his family, or maybe he boasts to his business partners, or maybe he boasts to, whoever he's got this circle, this circle of influence, he's so proud of. I think this is a real problem for financially successful men and women who also call themselves Christians. We have been so trained by the world in this. We have distorted versions of profitability. Profitability is a good thing, right? I think Proverbs makes that very clear. But we have distorted, because we live in a fallen world, we have really distorted versions of profitability, and we don't even know how distorted they are. Here's the third thing money will do to you. And this is what's really behind the distortions and the abuse that we're talking about. Money can feed pride and self-glory. Look at Proverbs 28:11. Turn to 28:11. Look at this. Money can just feed your pride and your self-glory. 28:11, a rich man is wise in his own eyes, but a poor man who has understanding will find him out. A rich man is wise in his own eyes. You're in the scriptures, to be wise in your own eyes is not a good thing. It's another way of saying filled with pride or filled with self-glory. It's the essence of foolishness. In Proverbs, to be wise in your own eyes is the essence of foolishness. So why then are we so quick to take credit for financial success? Things start going well, and you start doing well financially, and you start thinking, man, how clever I am that I chose to do that, and how hard I worked to get there. And then the financial success in some people, that really is significant financial success, morphs into this sort of become the smartest person in the room about everything else, like an expert on everything. Or you stop listening to others. When you get financially successful, you stop listening to others. You start trusting more and more in your own instincts. All the while, this is the self-deception, all the while you've just sort of you've pushed to the side the numerous variables that have been at play to get you to a place in your life, in this particular time, place, and season of life that would even make you financially successful. Just completely discounting the sovereignty of God in your life. All of a sudden, it's, man, I'm doing really well. Where does this inaccurate self-assessment come from? It comes from pride. This rich man is wise in his own eyes. He starts believing things about himself that couldn't be further from the truth. So here's what I'm saying. Money mixed with just the right amount of pride. Listen, please hear the gospel this morning. Money mixed with just the right amount of pride will do things to you that you never thought possible. It will mess you up. Two things I'm asking for you to give to me, Lord, before I die. Remove falsehood and deception from me. And then give me neither poverty nor riches. Because if I have more, if I have so much, if I have so much wealth and so much money, I really might be tempted to say, who is the Lord? Who is God? You know, that's what Pharaoh said. That's what Pharaoh said to Moses. Who's the Lord that I would obey him? And there's so much power in wealth and money that can be distorted that you and I can come to a place, like Proverbs 30 says, of even denying who is the Lord. I mean, there's just nothing like financial success to foster overconfidence in a particular person. The more you make, the more successful you are, the more you think you got it because you were so smart, or even worse, more worthy than other people. The ultimate danger of wealth is that it could lead you to say with Pharaoh, who is God? And even at the practical level, like week in and week out, day in and day out, who is the Lord? Here's the fourth thing, number 4. Money can also give you a false sense of identity and security. Money has the power to trick you. Money has the power to trick you, to snooker you at the level of identity and belonging and security. Go to 1811. 1811. Look at Proverbs 18 and verse 11. Money can give you a false sense of identity and security. A rich man's wealth is his strong city, a high wall in his imagination. Now, to get this proverb, you got to kind of do a little time traveling. You got to go back to a day and a place where a fortified, walled city was where you would want to live, where you would live in an established, protective environment, right? It had all sorts of benefits. You'd be protected at night from wild animals and from thieves and from enemies. You would also have a sense of belonging in that city, a sense of family identity, a sense of purpose, a sense of significance. What's happening in 1811 is a rich man's wealth has become like his city. It's become his stronghold, his place of identity and security and belonging. And that's exactly how powerful money is. Money can become your place of security, your place of significance. The key word in verse 11, did you find it yet? 18:11. Find the key word in the second line. It's in his imagination. It's not real. It's a false sense of security. Now, some of you who don't perhaps have as much wealth as others will find self-righteousness in frugality or not spending much, and actually taking pride in driving a vehicle with 250,000 miles on it. And there's this sort of false sense of security, even in what frugality is. I think frugality is actually a virtue, but then we kind of monkey with the virtue a little bit, and we just shortcut it and say, "I'm too cheap to do that," and we think of it as honorable when we make that expression. I'm too cheap to do that. We're kind of commending ourselves in front of people. And then those who don't have as much start to take self-righteousness and self-glory in how tight they manage everything, how tight the budget is managed. And guess what's driving that? I'm trying to not let anybody get out of here alive. Okay? So if you have a ton of money, you got problems. If you don't have any money, you got problems. But what's driving your sense of security? Is your commitment to frugality and being miserly and being cheap so you can brag about how old your vehicle is or how inexpensive your food budget is that actually reflecting a false sense of security and identity? It could be. We imagine. The key word in 1811 is imagination. We imagine all sorts of senses of security. We go everywhere for security except the previous verse, back up to 1810. Guess where you should go for security, identity, and belonging? What's it say? The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it, and that's where they find security. That's where they find a stronghold. Listen, repeat after me. You don't have to do it out loud, but just in your own mind or whisper it. I can live without anything except Jesus. I don't need all this. Say that to yourself. Believe the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it, and they are safe and secure in God. Your security will never be true, lasting security if it is not in God Himself. The righteous run into it and are safe. One last point here. Go back to 11:4. Before I leave this false sense of security, I got to go all the way to the end in terms of the day of judgment, because Proverbs 11:4 is so strong. I really want you to see this. Proverbs 11:4, riches will not profit you in the day of wrath, that is, at the day of judgment. It will do you no good to have wealth and riches and all that you think that would make you secure. It will help you. It will not help you at all in the day of wrath. 11:4. Jesus said to a man who was incredibly rich and successful, well, he tells the parable, sorry. Let me set you up. The parable of the rich fool. This guy gets super successful and he says, what am I going to do with all my success? Well, I'm going to build bigger barns and I'm just going to keep expanding the kingdom. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have everything you need. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, fool, tonight your soul will be required of you. Then whose will these things be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God, Jesus said. Jesus' version of Proverbs 11:4 is treasure God. Treasure God more than anything else. So here's the real bottom line. The real bottom line is wealth and money can be dangerous like any good gift from God. That's what it is. It's a good gift from God, but it can so quickly turn into idolatry. So protect your heart from that. It's not an inherently bad thing. Wealth is actually a gift from God to be stewarded and managed and redistributed for the mission of God's glory all over the earth. So let me close with I'm just going to fire them out to you, 4 ways that wisdom will help you with wealth and money. Number 1, wisdom will help you to get honest with yourself. Just go look these up. I would love for you to dig into these on your own. Number 1, get honest with yourself. Someone prayed this morning before the service, Lord, why do we have such a deep resistance to even talk about money? I thought that was so insightful. Get honest with yourself. Wisdom will help you get honest with yourself. Number 2, choose simplicity and contentment as a way of life. Go back to Proverbs 30 and really dig into that, verses 8 and 9. Choose simplicity and contentment, neither poverty nor riches. That's going to position you to be generous. It's going to position you to be a life-giving person. Number 3, honor the Lord with your wealth. That comes out of a tithing context in the Old Testament. The New Testament commands about giving do not require tithing. They kind of assume that why wouldn't you start at the 10% mark? So grace giving, even if you think of it as grace giving in the New Testament, I would encourage you to think of 10% as a very obvious biblical place to begin. But you wouldn't stop there necessarily. If you were honoring the Lord with your wealth. If you're not at 10%, by the way, let me say this to free some people up. If you're not at 10% and you're trying to sort through what to do financially to start giving consistently, just start with it. Just start at 5%. Don't start at 5% and pray for forgiveness for the other 10%. That's not how this works. The Lord knows your heart. Start at 5% and get serious about giving something. And then grow yourself to 10% and become more fully obedient to the Lord. And then maybe you wouldn't stop at 10%. You see what, this is not just, this wisdom is not a list of rules. There's this beautiful giving standard, but it doesn't stop there. I'm not saying you shouldn't give 10%. Okay? Just to be clear, I'm just trying to help people who've not thought about that before and really don't practice giving to think about how to step into honoring the Lord with their wealth. Number 4, scatter, don't gather. I had no idea this was your favorite verse. Josh and I did not talk about this today, and so I had no idea that was the Fridley's favorite verse on giving. But that's in you can translate it. He who scatters. It's a seed image in 11:24. He who gives generously, some translations have. So learn to come to a place where you just love, like when the Lord blesses you with an extra $100 here or an extra $200 there, you start to get into a habit where the first thing you think of is not what's the next big thing I'm going to buy for me, but I wonder how we could use this as a family to bless someone else. Start scattering. Start scattering your generosity. Start scattering the seeds of generosity. Why? Because 2 Corinthians 8:9 says, Jesus gave himself fully for us, so fully and freely for us. Listen to this. I just want to say it the right way. I'm trusting myself quoting this. Here we go. Paul says, I say this not as a command. Listen. I say this not as a command. He's talking about giving. He's talking about habits of giving and generosity. I say this not as a command, but to prove by the earnestness of others that your love also is genuine. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus, that though he was rich, for your sake he became poor, so that you by his poverty might become rich. Do you know what you get to do when you give generously and scatter freely toward other people? This church, outside of this church, to the kingdom of Christ, to mission all over the world. When you do that, you are spreading the opportunity of grace. The grace and the gospel of Jesus. Scatter freely. Sow sparingly, reap sparingly. Sow bountifully, you will reap bountifully, Paul goes on to say in chapter 9, 2 Corinthians. Here's why you should take your wealth and money and stewardship and management of all the resources God has given you, your time, your energy, your talents, and your money. Because Jesus, listen, Jesus held nothing back. That's why you should. That's why you should give. That's why you should be a steward. That's why you should not trust in money. Because Jesus held nothing back and fully gave himself. And we are recipients of his grace at every level. The clothes you have on, the house you live in, the food you eat. It's a gift of God's grace.